It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change. That's the finding of a new study by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
It's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
This is the story of how fossil fuel companies have used 5 different strategies to spread disinformation and delay climate action for more than 50 years. Before we start discussing the 5 strategies, we need to go back to the beginning. Did fossil fuel companies know about climate change? Yes. Did they do their own internal research? Absolutely.
They say Exxon's own experts produced models on warming that were even more accurate than NASA's projections.
In 1957, scientists working at Humble Oil, now called ExxonMobil, published a paper on the dilution of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and ocean, showing the company knew about the direct links between their activities and rising CO2 levels. In 1968, the American Petroleum Institute, whose members include Shell, ExxonMobil, BP, and many more, also had a report prepared for them at the Stanford Research Institute, which stated the consequences of climate change and the causes. Did management know? Yes. In 1978, Exxon's senior scientist warned the management committee about the scientific consensus on global warming. Non-US companies also came to the same findings, such as Shell, who even redesigned one of its gas platforms by raising it to account for sea level rise. Finally, in 1995, the Global Climate Coalition, a coalition formed by fossil fuel companies, distributed an internal memo stating that the scientific basis for the greenhouse gas effect cannot be denied. So, it's been a long time since these companies clearly knew, and instead of adapting, decided to make matters worse. How did they do that? They employed many strategies to spread disinformation and delay action. The following 5 strategies have been named by the Union of Concerned Scientists. Our first one is the fake. Here, companies conduct counterfeit science and fund climate science misinformation and try and pass it off as legitimate research. In the 1990s, contrarian scientists were paid to become the backbone of climate science denial, such as Willie Soon. In 1998, a petition made by an ExxonMobil-funded think tank was published. It was a petition to challenge the consensus on climate change, but the petition came with this paper. It was purposefully made in the style of proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, NAS, attempting to mislead people. Due to a former NAS president's signature of the petition, which actually turned out to be a climate change denialist, and the mimic nature of the paper, many scientists were duped into signing the petition. In 2021, an Exxon lobbyist said this:
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. There's nothing illegal about that.
For which he and ExxonMobil later apologized.
You know, we were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
When it comes to funding, Brulle finds that organizations promoting climate misinformation science received more than $900 million of corporate funding per year, either directly or increasingly through untraceable donor networks to hide the sources of the funds. The second strategy used is the Blitz. This is when actual scientists or groups are harassed for having views the companies don't like. In 1996, after the IPCC's second assessment report was published, the Global Climate Coalition questioned the IPCC's scientific integrity, specifically scientist Ben Santner, in a memo sent to media outlets. Energy Daily, The Washington Times, and The Wall Street Journal amplified the memo, and coal-funded GCC member Western Fuels Associations also cited the memo. Letters were directly sent to Santa from the GCC asking for a revision of a chapter they did not like and not for Christmas presents. Another example is when Exxon lobbyists sent letters to the Bush administration asking for certain climate scientists to be removed from positions of power. These include the then head of the IPCC Robert Watson and other US climate scientists such as Michael McCracken. The third and probably most used is the diversion. This is where you manufacture uncertainty about science where little or none exists, and I would add to this, shifting blame onto other things or people.
But scientific evidence remains inconclusive as to whether human activities affect the global climate.
This is Lee Raymond, an ex-CEO of ExxonMobil. Although scientific consensus was clear both inside and outside his company for many years, he made multiple speeches in the late 90s denying the certainty of global warming and denying that fossil fuels have a role, even claiming the Earth was cooler. In 2000, ExxonMobil published an ad that highlighted a study showing a historical decrease in temperatures in the Sargasso Sea, which was then used as evidence that fossil fuels were potentially not causing global warming. Surprise, surprise, the author of the study later said that ExxonMobil had been misleading in its use of the data and his study, and that his study did not show that global warming wasn't happening. Western Fuels Association ran a series of disinformation campaigns which included a video of the benefits of higher carbon dioxide levels, distributed to journals and university libraries.
More carbon dioxide, then more. The year 2085, the atmospheric level of carbon dioxide has doubled to 540 parts per million. What kind of world have we created?
A better world, a more productive world.
Information Council for the Environment, formed by a coalition of coal companies, had campaign plans in the 1990s where they would attempt to reposition global warming as theory and not fact. Another memo from the American Petroleum Institute in 1998 shows a roadmap of climate deception where victory will be achieved when the following statements happen, putting an emphasis on spreading uncertainty. It's not only fossil fuel companies, but certain individuals with interests in fossil fuels. In the US, this includes the Koch brothers, who poured millions of dollars into climate change denying think tanks and lobby groups. When it comes to shifting blame or responsibility onto others, BP's carbon footprint campaign in the mid-2000s is a perfect example.
What size is your carbon footprint?
BP popularized this idea of an individual carbon footprint, which is still heavily used nowadays, and was part of a $100+ million a year marketing campaign. The fourth strategy used is the screen, where companies buy credibility through alliances with academia or professional societies. The Willie Soon I mentioned at the beginning, this guy...
I really don't think that you can find or argue convincingly that there is any significant sort of worries about the sea ice condition in the Arctic.
Received $1.2 million in research funding between 2000 and 2012 from fossil fuel interests including ExxonMobil, the Southern Company, the American Petroleum Institute, and the Charles Koch Foundation. He used his affiliation with the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics to add to his credibility. However, these companies also need to spread disinformation discreetly, which is why they use astroturfing through professional societies. This is where groups are created to falsely represent grassroots. Thus, companies can simply fund these organizations who do the dirty work for them. ExxonMobil also like to name-drop prestigious universities to add credibility to their actions. The final strategy used we can call the fix, where companies have manipulated government officials or processes to inappropriately influence policy. Since 2007, ExxonMobil has donated $1.9 million to politicians in US Congress who deny climate change. Many fossil fuel companies also donated for the inauguration of Donald Trump. In a clear attempt to sway policy before Kyoto in 1997, Mobil posted an ad named Reset the Alarm, which essentially claimed that the situation is too uncertain to act. Some fossil fuel companies went even further and actually pretended to be other groups through forged letters, which were then sent to Congress to influence vote on climate change legislation. This letter, for example, was forged and sent to Congress, written by Bonner and Associates on behalf of the American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity. As you can see, they use the NAACP's signature and letterhead. Thankfully though, the Paris Agreement in 2015 put a stop to climate denial. Oh no, actually no, it didn't. A 2019 report by Influence Map shows that the 5 largest publicly traded oil and gas majors have invested over $1 billion of shareholder funds in the 3 years following the Paris Agreement on misleading climate-related branding and lobbying. We have also seen a shift in how fossil fuel companies portray themselves by changing their narrative and greenwashing their image. In 2012, ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson now accepted that climate change is real, but that the solution is to simply adapt.
Okay, so we will adapt to this. Changes to weather patterns that move crop production areas around, we'll adapt to that. It's an engineering problem, and it has engineering solutions.
Another example is Total rebranding itself to Total Energy, with it still being an oil giant. I have talked a lot about the US and companies such as ExxonMobil, Shell and BP. However, this is still going on today and in most countries. I will end this video on a positive note though. At least COP28's absolutely fantastic president is a firm believer of change. Or is he?
And there is no science out there, or no scenario out there, that says that the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 1.5.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to learn more about climate change, don't forget to subscribe.